So tell us about your work with more low resource diagnostic health monitoring, and why do you think that health monitoring in Africa is so important to you?
Great. Yeah. So this is I've been working on a couple of projects for a while, but I haven't been able, to work directly on the continent yet. But my goal is to, work there in the long term. And so my work right now is trying to optimize methods to improve how different respiratory functions or symptoms are diagnosed or detected by computer vision systems. And so I would say this is very important just because in a lot of regions, throughout the global south and also in sub-Saharan Africa specifically, the healthcare systems, aren't really, I say, well built. And so, they rely on a lot of, I would say, informal healthcare, that's done by community health workers like NGOs. And so not having, and also there's a lack of doctors, but there's a lack of specialized doctors, and so using technology can kind of augment, this lack of doctors and also just like healthcare in general to help improve, the detection, diagnosis, and also like treatment of diseases. And so that's something that's super important to me. And then also, as being someone who I consider myself to be Nigerian, even though I was born in America. And when I was growing up, I heard a lot about, the different healthcare issues that my parents faced, and also like that, their siblings, faced and also like family members who were back home in Nigeria still faced and continue to face. And so that's something that, like became very kind of, I say important to me and stuck with me as I, have gone throughout my research journey. So I wanted to do something that would directly have an impact in this space.
It's awesome. And it's obviously very useful, and it's great that you're doing this kind of stuff.
Thank you.
And then, so what are some of the difficulties? You talked a lot about, the getting access to that AI, but are there any difficulties of deploying this AI in the low resource areas?
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing that comes to mind is just infrastructure. And even, without thinking about, I would say, technological capacity, there are things like, roads and stuff that are not well built out. There are things, like hospitals and clinics that are not built out. And then also just in terms of, I would say, technical infrastructure, like, Wi-Fi or, what am I trying to say? Okay, let me say just like internet, and also just like telecommunications infrastructure, can be lacking in some areas. And so if you're building devices, that kind of rely on the cloud, it may not be possible to deploy them in these kinds of regions. And then also thinking about if you're working with, you're working with different kinds of devices. And so since electricity may be a problem, people cannot rely on, big equipment that, needs to be plugged in and like, on 24/7. And so a lot of machine learning models at the moment are kind of developed and trained on large GPUs, and so that's not really possible just because they take up a lot of electricity, and yeah, it's just not feasible to move them from these large like expensive computers with all this kind of fancy hardware to small phones that are yeah, it's not possible to yet to move them to smaller phones that are not even okay, sorry, just like let me say, fix what I'm trying to say. Okay, yeah, so it's not possible to move these large models to smaller phones that have like lower capacity than like some of the phones that you see used in the West, like iPhones or like fancy Google Pixels and stuff. So that's a difficulty I see.